Hi, this is text problem 23-4C, and we're given here a table with our total hourly output and sales of pizzas. So this is the number of pizzas that we sell, and then the total hourly cost of selling that many pizzas, the revenue from selling that many pizzas, the economic profit from selling that many pizzas, and then our task is to find the marginal cost and marginal revenue at each point. So for each number of pizzas that we sell, what our marginal cost and marginal revenue are. So the key word in both of these is marginal. And you'll remember from your textbook that a marginal cost or marginal revenue means that amount of cost that you incur from increasing your sales of pizza or your output of pizza by 1. So that's your marginal cost. And your marginal revenue, similarly, is the amount of extra revenue you get when you increase the amount of pizza just by 1. So if I decide to make 1 more pizza than I made last hour, how much more will it cost me? And if I decide to make 1 more pizza than I made last hour, how much more revenue will I get from that 1 more pizza? And that's what's meant by marginal. It's just at that margin, when we add 1 more at that margin, what is our extra cost and what is our extra revenue. So it's helpful here to remember the formula for these two concepts, the marginal cost and marginal revenue. And I'm going to use Excel to help me in this question, where I've already, you'll see I've already put in to Excel this table that I was given in the problem. So, but I'll write down here at the bottom to remind myself what the definition or the formula for marginal cost and marginal revenue are. So marginal cost, this just means what is the change in cost divided by the change in output or production. So in other words, how much does my cost change when I change my output by 1? Or for each output change, how much cost change do I have? And marginal revenue, very similarly, revenue is my change in revenue divided by my change in output or production. Okay, so in mathy terms, what that means is that we'll have our second cost, cost 2, minus our, I'll put this in parentheses, cost 2 minus cost 1. So our cost from whatever our second amount is that we're creating or that we're outputting, minus the cost from outputting 1 fewer, and we'll divide that by our change in output. So my output 2 minus output 1. Does that make sense? So we're just, change in math always just means difference, right? So the difference down here between revenue 2 minus revenue 1 divided by output 2 minus output 1. All right? So there are our 2 formulas, and now it's just a matter of going through this table and filling these in. So let's do the first couple by hand, and then we'll get Excel to do the rest for us, okay? So for the first row, we can't determine a marginal cost and marginal revenue when we first get started. So from -1 to 0 production doesn't make any sense because we have no 0 production. So our 0 row is always just blank. So we'll just leave that blank, as they show here over here in the problem. They leave it blank as well. So now what we really want to know is what's our marginal cost or marginal revenue from increasing our sales of pizza. I don't need it to be that big, but I do want to be able to read sales of pizza. There we go. So increasing sales of pizza from 0 to 1. All right. So our marginal cost we can calculate using our formula down here. So it's going to equal the cost from producing 1 pizza, which is 10, minus the cost from producing no pizzas, which is 6. So that's apparently just the cost from having the store open, whether or not we make any pizzas, right? And then we'll divide that by how many we produced. So our 1 is our second amount that we outputted, right? So 10 goes with 1 minus our 0. So we're going from 0 pizzas to 1 pizza. So our second quantity is 1, our first quantity is 0. Our second cost was 10, our first cost was 6. So this will give us 4 over 1, or Excel will tell us that just equals 4. And for marginal revenue, we can do the same thing. So in this case, we look at our revenue column. So from going from 0 pizzas to 1 pizza, our revenue goes from 0 to 12. So we have on top our second revenue, which is 12, minus our first revenue, which is 0. And on bottom, we have our second quantity, which is 1, minus our first quantity, which was 0. So our marginal revenue here is 12. We can do that in the second line. Now we're talking about what we get, our marginal cost from going from 1 pizza to 2 pizzas. So in this case, we go from a cost of 10 to a cost of 12. So on the top of our fraction here, we'll have 12 minus 10 divided by, on the bottom, we go from 1 pizza to 2 pizzas, so we have 2 minus 1. And revenue, similarly, we go from $12 to $24, so our top of our fraction is 24 minus 12. And our bottom, again, we're going from 1 pizza to 2 pizzas, so it's 2 minus 1. All right, so here we have a marginal cost of 2 when we go from 1 pizza to 2 pizzas, and a marginal revenue of 12 when we go from 1 pizza to 2 pizzas. And I can get Excel just to calculate all of this for me by telling it that my marginal cost is always going to be this cost, the cost on, so for going from 2 to 3, it's the cost of 3 minus the cost of 2. And now I'm doing it, as you see, with cell references instead of with actual numbers, so that Excel will calculate the rest for me. You don't have to do this. Of course, you can do this on paper with a pen or pencil, and get the same answer. You don't have to use Excel. I just like to make my life easier by getting Excel to do the work for me. So the bottom of my fraction is my 3 minus my 2. All right? And then I can tell Excel to fill in this formula all the way down. And now I have my marginal cost all the way down. And marginal revenue, similarly, is going to be the revenue for making 3 minus the revenue for making 2 divided by the number that I make, which is 3, minus the number I was making, which was 2. And I can tell Excel to fill this in all the way down too. All right, so now I have my numbers that I can plug in over here. So I've got a 42124. Let's see if I can remember that. 4, 2, 1, 2, 4. And then 6, 8, 10, 12, 16. 6, 8, 10, 12, 16. And my marginal revenue, you notice, is 12 all the way down. So 12, 12, 12. And that's really because I'm charging $12 per pizza. So every additional pizza I sell, I make $12 more. Makes sense. All right, we should be good. We are. All right, and then it asks us, based on the marginal analysis, what is the profit maximizing rate of output for the pizza shop? Okay, and so for this part, remember from your textbook, and just really sort of logically, that you want to produce at a point where your marginal cost equals your marginal revenue. And that's going to be your profit maximizing rate. You definitely don't want to go above that, where your cost is greater than your revenue, right? Because then it doesn't make sense to make another pizza because you're spending more than you're getting for that pizza. And you don't want to be below that, where your cost is less than your revenue, because that means that you could increase to one more pizza and make even more money. So where you want to produce to maximize your profit is where your marginal cost equals your marginal revenue. And in this case, we can see that that is here at 9 pizzas, where marginal cost is 12 and marginal revenue is 12. So we want to make 9 pizzas. Perfect. And that's that for that question. If you have any more questions about this, feel free to stop by office hours or shoot me an email.